Channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. Very important meeting took place yesterday between the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the president of the Republic of Belarus, Lukashenko. They were talking, they were listening to the report of the general staff. Lukashenko said that he and Putin heard a report from the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Let's say we got report that the meeting between Lukashenko and Putin has concluded after lasting 5 hours and 22 minutes. So during this meeting, Putin most likely, not just Putin, but also the head of the general staff of the Russian Federation, provided Lukashenko lots of very important information about the situation on the ground and about further plans in the area of the special military operation. And right after this meeting ended, the president of Belarus made his own statement regarding the situation. He stated that there is a very good peace proposal on the table for Ukraine. If the Ukrainians don't accept it, they'll lose their country, Lukashenko said. Most likely, currently we see that the president of Belarus revealed some details of plan that was provided him by the president of Russia. President Putin and I discuss it. I won't talk about it. The president will say that himself. Good proposals for Ukraine, which Trump heard in Alaska, among other things, have been taken to Washington for consideration and discussion. Very good proposals. As you can see, he repeats this statement for several times. If the Ukrainians don't accept these proposals, it will be like the beginning of the special military operation. It will be even worse. They will lose Ukraine, the Belarusian president said. He added that if Kiev had accepted Moscow's proposals in 2022, all of Ukraine's territories except Crimea would now be a part of Ukraine. So very good proposals, as we can see. Later, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belarus stated that the system of Oreshnik is already on the territory of the Republic of Belarus. So now we see that the Russian Federation finished the securing of its western flank. We're talking about Belarus. They deployed one of the most powerful weapons they have. Now we believe that there is no such European country that will try to make any probably dangerous situation with the Russian Federation in coming months. And now the Russians have probably possibilities to intensify their ground operations or their activities on the territory of Ukraine with the purpose to defeat Ukraine completely. So Zelensky had a chance to accept proposals. Maybe he still has. Furthermore, we got to report that U.S. President Donald Trump has refused to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles with a range of up to 1,600 kilometers. We'd like to remind you that Zelensky several days ago stated that he would attack Russia with these missiles, but now we see that he will not be able to have this possibility. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians of the group of forces East continue their offensive operation. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. The most important changes took place to the east of the settlement of Poltavka, to the east of the Poltavka fortified area. This information was confirmed by pro-Russian resources, by neutral mappers, and by pro-Ukraine resources. So as you can see, every single resource confirmed information that the Russians are about to begin offensive operation in the direction of Poltavka fortified area. The Russians most likely are going to use these main 3 lines that go in the direction of the settlement. They will attack the village at least from 3 directions from the northeast, and most likely Russians will attack the settlement also from the southeast. These are going to be something like a support operations with the purpose to pin down the Ukrainians and to stretch the reserves. We believe that the Battle of Poltavka is going to start within the next even maybe hours or maybe some days. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians improved their positions to the east of the Uspenovka fortified area. Few more trenches and strongholds were taken by the Russians. This information was confirmed by neutral mappers and by pro-Russian resources. At the same time, the Russians of the 29th and the 36th armies continue their offensive operation in the northwestern direction, this time with the purpose to capture all these small villages on the way towards the settlement of Pokrovskaya. This information, as you can see, was confirmed and provided by neutral mappers, by pro-Ukraine resources, and by pro-Russian resources. So we see that Ukrainians have no chances, no possibilities to stop this Russian offensive. Telling the truth, I expected that that's when Russians got the settlements of Poltavka and Uspienovka, the Ukrainians would be able to show at least some resistance, but I was wrong. I see the Ukrainians can't do anything with this. They don't have maybe drones, maybe manpower, maybe they have shortage of all of these resources. So that is why the Russians are moving without any resistance from the Ukrainian side. When this fortified area falls, it seems that then nothing will be able to stop the Russians in this direction. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. The situation is very critical in this area, and this information was provided by Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian resources. Ukrainian armed forces logistics near Mirnograd and Pokrovsk are blocked. Troops are semi-encircled and the entire agglomeration is under threat. Ukrainian armed forces veteran Viktor Taran reported that the situation in the so-called Dobropilye direction poses a direct threat to the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Essentially, the logistics roads to Pokrovsk-Mirnograd area are blocked. This situation is critical and requires an appropriate response. You don't need to be a military expert to see from the map that the troops are semi-encircled. The leadership must take the necessary measures to strengthen our forces in the Pokrovsk agglomeration. We need to act, the Ukrainian Armed Forces soldier concluded. So we see that indeed the Ukrainians have just a very short gap, just a very short corridor for supplying their contingent on the territory of the agglomeration. And if we let's say that Russians recently have begun offensive operation in the western sector of the city of Pokrovsk in the Pokrovsk agglomeration, we understand that this news around the city and the agglomeration of Pokrovsk could be tightened even more. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation from the eastern flank of the agglomeration. Currently, there are very heavy clashes for the outskirts of the city of Mirnograd. The Russians most likely are focused to answer the agglomeration exactly from this part. During the previous 12 hours, pro-Russian resources made significant changes on the ground in this area, and according to them, the armed forces of the Russian Federation, for the first time since the beginning of the assault operation, managed to answer the Mirnograd agglomeration by taking under control the village by the name of Balagan. So the Russians are saying that this settlement was captured by the Russians during the previous several days or even hours. If this information is correct, Russians from these positions would be able to improve their FPV drone control over the main logistic roads, and it seems that the southern part of the agglomeration may fall in Russia's hands in coming days. Furthermore, the Russians are saying that they continue offensive operation in the area of the breakthrough. Today, pro-Russian resources also added additional changes on the ground. Despite the talks and despite the messages and different statements from pro-Ukraine resources that they're about to cut this area of breakthrough, that there are 3 cauldrons that were created by Ukrainians, we see that the Russians at the same time show us that they continue offensive operation and that during the previous several days they managed to improve their position significantly. The most important update is coming from the area of Krasny Liman. The Russians are saying that they managed to secure the southern parts and basically the roads TO515 was cut by the Russians physically. If this information is correct, then this is already a cauldron without any chances for Ukrainians for evacuation. So the situation here remains tense. There are very heavy clashes in these directions, so let's wait and see what is going to be next. Now let's talk about the Sieversk-Liman direction, where the Russians also continue their offensive operation. This morning, lots of mappers, including pro-Ukraine resources, confirmed that indeed the situation between Sieversk and Liman is critical. The Ukrainians haven't managed to stabilize the situation during the previous days of clashes, and the Russians continue offensive operation. The Russians send more and more units in this direction, and it seems that the city of Yampol, at least the defense of the northern part of the city of Yampol, is going to fall in coming days. I would like to remind you that the Russians are tasked to secure the area and to get as close as possible to the road TO513 between the city of Liman and Sieversk itself, with the purpose to cut the road and to establish physical control over the territory. At the same time, the Russians continue their assault operation on the villages of Novoselovka, Derilova and Dobryshevo. There are also very heavy clashes. These 2 villages are located on different banks of the river of Nitrius. Neutral mappers confirm that the Russians improved their positions and and secured the Rilova completely. Pro-Russian resources reported that the settlement of Novosilovka is already, let's say, half of the settlement is already under control of the Russian Federation. The Ukrainians send lots of troopers, lots of forces with the purpose to stabilize the situation, and we see that the Ukrainians use more often and often different robotic systems like this one, but Russians, when see such a system, destroy this system immediately. The main logistics of Ukrainians in the area of Novosilovka lays through along the villages of Svetogorsk and Yarova. In this video we can see how several vehicles were heading towards the settlement of Novosilovka with the purpose to supply Ukraine contingent, but this vehicle was damaged, at least damaged. In this video we can see another vehicle that was heading towards the village of Novosilovka, but this vehicle was destroyed by Russian FPV drone. So Russians established complete control over the area, and the Russians don't allow anything to get there. Ukrainians have a very poor logistic in Novosilovka. There is a river of Nitrius, there is a river Seversky Donetsk, and the only way how to support this contingent is through the settlement of Svetogorsk. So as we can see, Russians control the situation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Kupiansk, where Russians also continue their offensive operation. During the previous 12 hours, neutral mappers confirmed Russian progress on the ground in the western part of the settlement. Furthermore, today we got a very interesting report that was published by pro-Ukrainian resources. As you can see, they haven't adjusted the territory that is under control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, but the pro-Ukrainian resources increased the gray zone. And now, as you can see, most of the western and the northwestern parts of the city of Kupiansk is colored as territory under control of the Russian forces, or the gray zone, and the pro-Ukrainian resources show this pocket. So according to these mappers, the armed forces of Ukraine were caught in cauldron somewhere in the let's say central part of the northwestern part of the city of Kupiansk, around the railway station. So Ukrainians were caught in cauldron according to pro-Ukrainian resources, and we believe that the western part of the city of Kupiansk is going to fall in Russians' hands also in coming days, maybe in coming week or two. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day.